Hello, everybody. Here we go. Genesis 16, chapter 16, verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And Abram heeded the voice of Sarai. Did I read this already? Oh, well, won't hurt. Then Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. After Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. Yeah, I did, because I remember talking about the fact that Hagar ran away. And if she hadn't been a jerk to Sarah, then that probably wouldn't happen. So he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Then Sarai said to Abram, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judged between you and me." So Abram said to Sarai, "Indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do with her as you please." And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. Now the angel of the Lord found her by the spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from, and where are you going?" And she said, "I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress, and submit yourself under her hand." Then the angel of the Lord said to her, "I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren." And then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees." For she said, "Have I also here seen him who sees me?" Therefore the well was called Be'er Lahai. I remember stumbling over this last time. Be'er Lahai Roi. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. Chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, "I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless. And I will make my covenant between me and you, and will multiply you exceedingly." Then Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you, and your descendants after you, in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and your descendants after you. Also I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God." And God said to Abraham, "As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you, throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you, and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generations, he who is born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Then God said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her and also give you a son by her. And then I will bless her, and shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall be from her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, 90 years old, bear a child? And Abram said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. And then God said, no, Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this set time next year. Then he finished talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. All right, so before I read any farther, this is just a little bit more. I want to point out that little conversation that happened between Abraham and God about Ishmael. Abraham loved Ishmael. He was his firstborn male child. And that was always something that I may have told this story already. As I get older, I become one of those people that tell the same stories over and over. So if you've heard this one, bear with me. I was puzzled. It was one of those things that I saw and I went, I wonder what that's about. This was a culture that valued their firstborn male child. They were the ones that inherited, the ones that they expected to take care of them in their old age. And so as you read these stories, I keep seeing a pattern. That pattern of the firstborn not measuring up and the secondborn, or at least not the firstborn, inheriting what was supposed to go to the firstborn. You see it with obviously with Cain and Abel. Cain messes up, Abel gets killed. The next child, the third one, Seth, is the one that inherits. You see it with Abraham. You see Ishmael did not inherit. Isaac inherits. So the firstborn doesn't get the inheritance. The secondborn does. You see it with Isaac's sons later on. We're going to see that he had a set of twins. The firstborn was Esau, and he did not inherit, but Jacob, who was later named Israel, does inherit. And it gets just wild with Jacob's kids. Reuben doesn't inherit, but then, for that matter, neither does Levi or Simeon. It's Judah that inherits the kingship. So I was seeing this pattern, and I was like, what is that about? What is it with the firstborn and the secondborn thing? When in a culture that should have valued the firstborn highly, got this consistent pattern where the firstborn messes up somehow and the secondborn inherits. So I'm listening to this conversation in a podcast, and they weren't even talking about this. What they were talking about was that Genesis 6 B'nai Elohim thing. And and I hear this guy say, well, the B'nai Elohim, that means sons of God, but humans were not called the sons of God. Humans were called the sons of Adam. The only human that was ever called the son of God was Adam, because he was directly created by God. And then, of course, Yeshua. Yeshua was also called the Son of God. And I went, oh, I see it. All right, I see the pattern. The first one messes up, the second one gets it right. Okay, I see it. And I always thought that was super fascinating. All right, so as for Ishmael, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so Abraham took Ishmael, his son, all who were born in his house, and all who were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very same day, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very same day Abraham was circumcised, and his son Ishmael, and all the men of his house, born in his house or bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. And I'm going to keep going. Chapter 18. Then the Lord appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre, as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and he bowed himself to the ground. And he said, My Lord, if I have now found favor in your sight, do not pass on by your servant. Please let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. It's just fascinating. It is a fascinating concept to think of God needing his feet washed, because his feet got dirty. And I will bring a morsel of bread, that you may refresh your hearts. After that you may pass by, inasmuch as you have come to your servant. They said, Do as you have said. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, Quickly, make ready 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, and gave it to a young man, and he hastened to prepare it. So he took butter and milk and the calf which he had prepared, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree as they ate. And then they said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? So he said, Here, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life, and behold, Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I surely bear a child, since I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. Then the men rose from there and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them on the way. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Since Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known him in order that he may command his children and his household after him, that they may keep the way of the Lord, to do righteousness and justice, that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him. And the Lord said, Because of the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great. Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grave, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me. And if not, I will know. Then the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood there before the Lord. And Abraham came near and said, Would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Abraham is aware of the fact that Lot lives down in those cities. So he's kind of concerned about his nephew. Suppose there were 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing as this, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be as the wicked. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? So it just cracks me up. I imagine that I think we all have a tendency to talk to God like that, especially when things aren't going our way. But we're not like actually making eye contact with him when we do it. So there's a certain level of chutzpah going on right now. So the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. And then Abraham answered and said, Indeed, now that I, who am but dust, and ashes, have taken it upon myself to speak to the Lord, suppose there were 5 less than 50 righteous. Would you destroy all the city for the lack of 5? So he said, If I find there 45, I will not destroy it. And he spoke to him yet again and said, Suppose there should be 40 found there. So he said, I will not do it for the sake of 40. And then he said, Let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 should be found there. So he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, Indeed, now I have taken it upon myself to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 should be found there. So he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. And then he said, Let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak but once more. Suppose 10 should be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. So the Lord went his way as soon as he had finished speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. I see a cross-reference here. I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. To James 5:16. And I am a little curious as to what that's about. James 5:16. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man is much. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye.